everyone. And I just want to say, for those of you on Zoom, I can see the chat. So I've been enjoying looking at some of your experience here. So we are on the second day of the 48-hour fast. And I'm just curious how everybody's doing. So if you're in Zoom, put it in the chat. If you're watching this on socials, put it in the comments. I mean, this is really how our fasting community grew, is that we kept hearing so much feedback from people of how they were doing when they were fasting. And if you want to put in there, like, I'm not doing well, that's totally fine. This is not about being Pollyannish. I really like sometimes hearing where you guys hit hurdles, because it helps us refine how we educate you and what you need. So let's start off with this. Put in the chat or the comments, depending on where you're watching this, what did you discover about yourself so far? Because everything I've been teaching you has really been about self-discovery and how we have this power inside our bodies to heal. And most of us never got taught how to access it. So I would love to just sort of for a moment see what you discovered. I eat out of boredom. And so I'm looking at the Zoom comments. Emotional eating, yep, a lot of us. Emotional attachment to food. Nicole says she's strong. I love that. Sugar addict. I love it. Keep them coming. Not easy, but you can do hard things. You know, it's interesting. I want to talk about that for a moment, because the way that I look at a fasting lifestyle, stress eater, I love this. This is great. The way I look at a fasting lifestyle, this metabolic switch that we're going to talk about today, is once you learn to master it, you will free yourself from food. And I'm not saying that because you go periods of time without food, but I'm saying that because this is how the human body was designed. And when people get this metabolic switch down, what happens is hunger goes away. Put it in the chat, put it in the comments on social. Those of you that have been experienced fasters and you've been doing your metabolic switch for many years, put it in there. Like, did hunger go away for you at some point as you were building a fasting lifestyle? Yeah, gone. Look at that. Like, gone. Yes, totally. Yep. Like, it's crazy. So I'll tell you something that has just completely like baffled my mind. I'm such a fan of people choosing what's right for them and not creating real rigid boundaries around food. I feel like we should be in love with the food process. And every single person that I have talked to who has gone on the weight loss drugs, the main thing they can tell me is hunger went away. And when I think about that, I'm like, well, that's a fasting lifestyle. I mean, the biggest challenge I have after doing this for over 10, almost 15 years now of building a fasting lifestyle is that I'm not hungry. Now, that wasn't me before I started building a fasting lifestyle. So if you're like, can't see that, I want you to know that's what happens when you learn this metabolic switch that we will dive into in detail today, because you're going to be going, most of you are going to be going back into food. So I want to help you go back into food and have a very positive relationship to food. So, and I just want to point out, those of you that have been doing it for a while, that hunger goes away. Okay. So before I go into the logistics on or go into this metabolic switch and what to take note of as you go back into food, because there's going to be, those of you who hung out with me for a while, you know I love these checklists. Just like I gave you a checklist yesterday for oxytocin, today I want to give you a checklist for how do you know if food is working for you. So grab a pen, grab paper, because what you're going to be doing is going back into food. So I want to make sure that you understand how to make food work for you. Okay, but before I do that, a couple of logistics I just want to say. Some of you have messaged us and asked if you can go one more day into 72 hours. Absolutely. If you've hit today and you are like, I'm not even that hungry, I feel like I could go deeper, go for it. Like, use that, let your body tell you what it wants to do. So, so please honor that, because I can tell you that the last couple of times I've done 3-day water fasts, I've just spontaneously done them. Like, my hunger's gone, things are busy, and all of a sudden I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm going to go for 72 hours. So, as illogical as that might sound, some of you may be doing that, and just continue forward. And tomorrow, when I come on, I will be talking a little bit more about the 72-hour fast and why I love that fast. And those of you who may not be ready for the 72-hour fast, know that every single January, we promise to do a 3-day water fast. I love doing it at the beginning of the year. It's a phenomenal time, not only for our health, but for setting goals. And it's, you know, there's a whole spiritual side of fasting that I love to talk about in January. So, so know that that might be a target you're looking for. Okay, second thing, logistic wise, and then I'm going into this metabolic switch, is that if you want to have more of an experience with this fasting lifestyle, this is what we're doing over in my Reset Academy. And we're about to start a 15-day experience where, as a community, we come together and we practice different length fasts. We practice how to break a fast, and we practice different types of eating. So it's so interesting to me that when we take information in, we really don't grab it all. I don't know if you've all have ever listened to something over and over and over again. It's like you don't completely grab all the information. I mean, some people, we looked this up because I quoted this in Eat Like a Girl. Some people say that we only grab 10% of that information. Now, I will tell you, in my practice, I was acutely aware of this. And so we would do experiences together all the time with my patients. And I called them resets, so that we could take it from the head and put it into the body. And that's what you're doing right now with the 48-hour fast, is you're having an experience with it as opposed to just reading it in a book. So if you want to go to that next level and have a deeper experience with us, we are starting a fat burner reset on Monday. And my team will put the links in, or you can go to my website and you can sign up there. And this is how we take all these principles and put them into action. And then, through the help of my coaches, through the help of my amazing team, we can help you even get into brainstorming and looking at where you're getting stuck and looking at what you need even deeper. Okay, so there you go. That's just an overview of logistics. Okay, let's go into this metabolic switch, because this is really, really important. And those of you that are in my academy, you've heard me talk about this a lot. I'm really disheartened right now by the way that we are teaching nutrition on socials. There's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of this way is right, this way is wrong. And I really don't believe that. I believe that everybody has to find their own unique path when it comes to food. I also have been so deep in the research on fasting, and I have sat with the fasting giants and researchers, and I am absolutely convinced that we were not meant to eat all day. We were meant to eat and compress food into an eating window, and we were meant to leave longer periods where we have a fasting window. And so whatever your food ethos is, whether you're vegan, you're an omnivore, whether you're like, I'm not even going to care about food, I'm just going to eat whatever's in front of me, whatever your ethos is, take it and put it into this metabolic switch. And this metabolic switch I wrote about in Fast Like a Girl. I introduced it because as it really is the key to losing weight. Those of you that want to lose weight, like I don't know a faster way to drop weight than to understand your metabolic switch. And I'm going to give you like 2 minutes of the basics on this. And then we're going to really dive into the food piece of this. So this is how it works, is that when you eat, well, let me back up. You have two metabolisms, one that gets turned on when you eat and one that gets turned on when you don't eat. You are literally a hybrid car. You operate off of two different fuel sources. Okay, take that in for one hot moment. Every single diet you have ever been on has only been operating from one fuel source. This is why if we don't take food and put it through the lens of these two fuel sources, you will continue to fail at diet after diet after diet, because you have two fuel sources. This is why there's so much out there right now about dementia and Alzheimer's and like that's a growing problem. It's because we're not teaching the second fuel source and we're totally disrupted the first fuel source. So we've got to come back to this idea that our metabolism works off of two different fuel sources, one when we eat and one when we fast. And when we move from the first one, which I call the sugar burner fuel source, when we move from the sugar burner fuel source over to the fat burning fuel source, that switch takes about 12 hours. So think about this for a moment. Most of us, prior to hearing that, have only fasted when we're sleeping. Most people snack all the way up until they go to bed. Then maybe they sleep 7-8 hours, and then they wake up in the morning and they have breakfast, because we've all been taught breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So we never had enough time to get over to the other fuel source, which is a ketone. So what you all have been doing right now is learning how to switch back over, or to discover this new fuel source. And those of you that are like, I'm surprised at my mental clarity, I'm surprised that I'm not hungry, I'm surprised at my energy, put it in the chat if that surprised you. What you are experiencing for the very first time, perhaps, is this power of the other fuel source. In Fast Like a Girl, I gave you 6 different, energy off the wall. Yeah, this is amazing. It pleased me. Because when you learn how to thank you, clarity and focus. Now, those of you who don't have that, don't compare yourself. I'm going to explain why here in a moment. But when we go over to this other fuel source, it is a cleaner fuel source. It is called a ketone. And when you make ketones go up to the brain and they turn off hunger. And ketones are 50% of the fuel your brain needs. So if you got better mental clarity, guess what? It's because you discovered a cleaner fuel source to your brain that is improving mental clarity. One of the more fascinating podcast interviews that I did this year was with Lisa Mosconi. Lisa Mosconi is one of the premier female brain researchers in the world right now. And she talked about how when women go through menopause, they become less glucose sensitive. Their brains don't react to glucose the same way. So think about that for a moment. That means that if all I've been doing is eating all day and operating off of one metabolism and one fuel source and feeding my brain glucose, not ketones, when I get over 40, all of a sudden that fuel source isn't as efficient for my brain, which means I'm going to have memory loss. I'm going to have trouble holding on to new information. Like there's going to be brain changes that are not going to be great for me. And if this metabolic system is so messed up because I've been eating the wrong foods, now I have too much glucose in the brain. The brain doesn't know what to do with it. And so neurodegeneration starts. Alzheimer's is also being called type 3 diabetes, which is diabetes of the brain. So one of the things we can do, and I know we have both men and women on this line, but women at 40, that is the mark where you need to get to know this other fuel source, because ketones are going to be a beautiful way to keep your mental clarity high. Put in the chat if you are a woman over 40 who got her mental clarity back from fasting. I have seen it over and over and over again. Yes, thank you. Look at, just say yes, like keep it coming, because I said this to Lisa in this podcast. I was like, you should see my community of women. When I teach them how to tap over into this fuel source, all of a sudden the mental clarity comes back, because the brain, as we age, becomes less sensitive to glucose. So we've got to get some ketones. So this metabolic switch becomes more necessary as we age. And I honestly think it's probably for both men and women, but from a hormonal lens, my specialty is women more than men. And so the menopausal journey is something that I am deeply steeped in understanding from as many angles as possible. So coming back to this idea that what you just did over the last 2 days is you went into this ketone fuel source. Now, those of you that feel good, welcome. This is how it feels. This is why we love fasting. This is what you're not going to get with the weight loss drugs. You're not going to get this incredible healing effect and this mental clarity. Just not going to happen. The beautiful thing about ketones is your body has to burn fat in order to make a ketone, which is why you lose weight and you get mental clarity and you get better energy all at the same time. I'm like, I just don't know a better way to drop weight and improve health without spending a freaking dime. Like I continue over and over to be like, come on world, let's move with this concept. It's so powerful and it doesn't cost any money. Now, what do you do if over the last 2 days, you were one that was like, well, that was not my experience. I had brain fog. I was hungry the whole time. I was fatigued. If that was you, put it in the chat. I'm not here to be Pollyanna-ish. I'm here to help you see a future that I would love for you to be a part of. So if you had brain fog and you were hangry all the time, all that means is that this switch is a little rusty. And tomorrow I'm going to go through a checklist of what does it look like to lubricate this switch so that you can go into fasting effortlessly and you can go into eating effortlessly. So stay tuned for tomorrow's call because I'll be doing that. Okay. Now, because there's a reason, there's a checklist of things that make this rusty. And I'm going to go through this checklist. Those of you in my academy, I've gone through that checklist with you, but it's really good to revisit this. Now, let's talk about this eating window. And let me just say, literally, every single day I wake up and I'm like, how long am I going in a fasting window? And when am I opening my eating window? And honestly, for me, I like eating. If I had a preference, my eating window would probably be 2 to 5 or 6. Like that would be my preferred eating window. So what we have actually done in my schedule is we front load my day so that the time that I need most of my mental clarity is in the morning when I'm in a fasted state and I'm getting ketones, because I find my brain works better on ketones. So, but then when I switch back and I eat that first meal, I literally say to myself, I'm opened my eating window up. Once I have opened my eating window up, I make sure that that first meal matters, which if those of you that have pre-ordered Eat Like a Girl, I have, the first meal matters is all over this freaking book. I have recipes for the first meal. That first meal is the most important meal because it keeps the healing going. So make sure if there's any meal you're going to count, it's that first one. And I'm going to walk through some of the ideas around that first meal here in a second. But I go in with a good, strong meal. And then let's say an hour later, let's say I'm hungry. An hour later, then I'll go eat. Or let's say I'm bored. I need a dopamine hit. Now, one trick that I have for myself, and I want to just pass this on to you, is when it comes to food, and I put this in Eat Like a Girl, I put the hack on how you do this, is I have a personal value system with food. I have come up with my own understanding of what foods I will eat and what foods I won't eat. And my personal system looks like this. I don't do gluten. For me, just doesn't work. I also do very, very little sugar. The reason for that is because I was a sugar addict, like many of you, and it feels like I'll do it every once in a while, like maybe if I'm out at a nice restaurant. But for me, if I start putting a little bit of sugar into my diet, I start wanting a lot of sugar. So I came from many years of sugar addiction. So I have to minimize sugar. And then the third, the next personal value system for food with me is I don't eat toxins. I won't eat food that's laden with man-made chemicals. So I read ingredient labels. And if you don't know how to read ingredient labels, again, I have a whole section in Eat Like a Girl. That was like so important to me. I'm like, we got to take an ingredient label and we got to break this down. So I read labels, or I eat things that don't have a label. And then the last personal value system I have for myself is I eat good oils, not bad oils. The oils, inflammatory oils like canola oil and safflower and sunflower oil and soybean oil and vegetable oil, those will make you insulin resistant. So when I open up that eating window, I have a value system, an ethos. Just like some of you have life values, you should have food values. And I don't understand why we don't. Because right now, if you don't have food values, what's going to end up happening is you're going to follow what your taste buds tell you. And your taste buds have been hijacked by the big food world. So I gotta like take, I call them like, you know, when you bowl with kids and they put the bumper rails on so that the bowling ball doesn't go in the alley because the kids can barely pick up the ball. That's how I look at this, is how do I make sure I don't end up in the gutter with my food? So those are part of my personal food value system. Okay, now, once I open that eating window up and I've got my ethos in place, I follow 5 foundational ideas. And I'm going to go through them. I wrote them in Eat Like a Girl. And then I'm going to go through the art of breaking your fast, and a few other things. So you may want to write this down until you get Eat Like a Girl in your hands. These foundational 5 are always going to steer you in the right direction. I've got lists after lists after lists. So I'm trying to create like a guiding light for people. Okay, principle number 1, blood sugar matters, calories don't. If you are still counting calories, you are still setting yourself up for failure. I'm not going to go in the details of that, but I am obsessed with what food does to my blood sugar. What this means is that you will constantly see on me a continuous glucose monitor. It's my personal preference. If you don't have a glucose monitor, you can go off of symptoms. And here's how you know you nailed a meal, that you got the right blood sugar combination for yourself. The number one thing, and this is going to blow some of your minds, is that after a meal, you should have energy. Food should energize you. If you eat a meal and you are sleepy afterwards, you did not nail that meal. The blood sugar went too high, and then it dropped, and now you're sleepy. Second thing on blood sugar matters, a second symptom is, are you hungry? You should eat a meal, and then hours later, you should not be hungry. If you are constantly hungry, you didn't nail the combination of that meal. And in Eat Like a Girl, I have so much to share with you on this. So on this, for the sake of time, I'm just giving you the ideas. But you, after a meal, and I mean after a meal is 2 to 3 hours after a meal, you should have energy and you should not be hungry. And then the third thing is you should have mental clarity. If you've done those 3 things, you nailed the meal. So, good on you. That's what we're looking for. So if you don't have a blood sugar reader, then you want to look at those 3 things. If you do have a blood sugar reader, you want to see after a meal, what the standard is that it should take 2 hours for your blood sugar to return to the place it was before the meal. I like to say 90 minutes because I like people in my sphere to have incredible metabolic health. So what that means is that if you take a blood sugar reader, and if you don't do the continuous, you can get a little handheld one. The handheld one I love is Keto Mojo. I'm sure my team will put in links for you all. And we're working on a partnership right now with a CGM company that I will share with you later. So, but handhelds are cheaper. Continuous glucose monitors are more expensive. But you can also use these symptoms. So let's say your blood sugar is at 100 before a meal, and these are American numbers. So you're at 100, you eat a meal, it goes up to 160. What I want to know is how quickly does it go back down to 100? If it goes back down to 100 in 90 minutes or less, you nailed the meal. The meal was, you got the combo right, and your blood sugar is you're metabolically healthy. If it takes 2 hours or longer, you either didn't nail that meal, or you're metabolically unhealthy, and you just got to keep working on that switch. So that's foundational 5, number 1 is blood sugar matters, calories don't. Okay, foundational idea number 2 is that you are going to eat nature's carbs, not human-made carbs. This is a key. I mean, we've got so many people who are like, do I count carbs? Do I not count carbs? You will see in Eat Like a Girl, I was like, I got to take you all out of counting everything. Stop counting calories. Stop even obsessing too much on blood sugar. You understand your blood sugar. And let's come back to just looking at the simplicity of a carbohydrate. Nature's carbs have fiber in it, and fiber acts like a net for blood sugar. It will stop your blood sugar from spiking too high. So focus on eating nature's carbs, not man-made carbs. Human-made carbs are your cakes, your pastas, your desserts. When you walk into the grocery store, most of the human-made carbs are in the middle aisles. Nature's carbs around the outside. We literally shop at farmers markets, or when we're in LA, we go to the Mecca, to Erewhon, the Mecca. So, but outside of that, like, I don't go into grocery stores. I want to know my farmer. I want to know where that came from. And I am focused on eating carbohydrates that came out of the earth. If you want to continue the weight loss journey that you started right now, try for the next week only eating carbohydrates that came out of the earth. This is fruits, vegetables, potatoes, squashes, and watch what happens. Now, somebody put in here, what do I think of sourdough? Sourdough's bread is really interesting to me because it's fermented. And when you ferment, you bring the glucose and the gluten level down. So there are a few exceptions to the rule. Okay, legumes, I saw somebody put in here, legumes are also nature's carbs. They're nature's carbs. So foundational 5 rule number 1 is eat nature's carbs, not human-made carbs. Okay, foundational rule number 3 is feed your microbiome, not your taste buds. Okay, now you could equate that to, oh, you want me to eat stuff that's not yummy? No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that your microbes are dictating your taste buds. Candida is a perfect example of that. And we talked a little bit about this before, which is Candida is a fungus that lives inside your gut and makes you crave carbohydrates, sugar, and alcohol. And it does that because it wants you to keep it alive. That literally, these microbes in your gut are controlling your taste buds. And the minute you start to change what you feed it, they will die off. One of the greatest studies ever done. Thank you for those of you, Kelly Lyons, I see you in there. Those of you are like, so true. Put in there if your taste buds have changed as you have fasted. One of the greatest studies, I've mentioned it over and over again, that we ever saw in fasting was something called the every other day diet. Yeah, keep going. Did your taste buds change as you fasted? Put it in there. 100%. Love this. So the every other day diet, what they did is for a year, this researcher took a group of people who were metabolically unhealthy and said, you can eat whatever you want on one day, but then on the next day, you're going to fast. And then on the next day, you're going to eat whatever you want, and then you'll fast. So every other day they fasted, but there were no food requirements. By the end of the year, every single one had lost weight, and most of it was around their belly, by the way. Every single one of the people in the study had their metabolic markers change. So their blood pressure came down, and their cholesterol came down, and their hemoglobin A1C came down. So all the metabolic markers changed. But what surprised the researchers the most is as the year went on, people started making better and better food choices, and they stopped craving the toxic food. I shared with you the story about Todd. This is exactly what happened to Todd. So when we want to overcome our cravings, we have to feed the microbiome, which takes us into that first meal. When you have fasted this long, when you are fasting, even if you don't go 24 hours, you are making a change in that microbiome. As you move towards 24 hours, what you're doing is old bacteria are sloughing off, new bacteria form. You're changing that internal environment of your microbiome. Now, think of your microbiome like a little pet that is in your gut. And that pet wants to give you oxytocin, serotonin, melatonin, wants to make you feel good, wants you to eat all the right foods. Like, this is like your best friend. And that best friend lives inside your gut. And everything you're trying to do with your health habits, it's like right there wanting to support you. All you need to do is keep it alive. Just keep it alive. And you keep it alive by feeding it what we call the 3 Ps: polyphenol, probiotic, and prebiotic foods. I have lists of these in Fast Like a Girl, and I have even more lists of these in Eat Like a Girl. So I'm not going to go through the list, but I'm a list person. I mapped them all out so you can see them. But they look a little bit like fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi. And if you don't like those, eat them anyways. I always say, like, what did everybody do in college? Like, did everybody like taking a shot of tequila or a shot of vodka when you're in college? No, you did it for the after effect. Well, do that with fermented foods. If you don't like them, eat them anyways. Eat fermented yogurt. That's really yummy. Even the sourdough is a really interesting possibility because it has this fermented. I have interviewed so many experts on the Resetter podcast, and the one unifying thing that every expert can agree upon is that fermented foods rock, and they are a necessity in our diet that we are not getting. So Chef Jeff and Chef Leslie have pickling and, oh my God, so many fermented ingredients in recipes in here. So we can bring fermented foods back in. So probiotic is the fermented. Prebiotic is anything with fiber. So this is going to be your salads, like your green leafy vegetables. It's going to be nuts and seeds. So a lot of times my first meal in is a green salad with hemp seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds. I cut up avocados. This is like on a normal day. I'll cut up avocados in there. I'll put a lot of like dandelion greens and radicchio. And then I will literally take sauerkraut out of the bottle and I will put it in the salad so I don't taste it as much. That's another way for those of you who don't like sauerkraut. Put it in your salad. And then I will put a protein on top of it. And that is a classic breakfast meal for me because I am feeding those microbes some of those probiotic and prebiotic foods. And then the last one, the polyphenol, is really awesome because once you understand polyphenol foods, these are like your extra virgin olive oil, which is spectacular. This is why I break my fast many times with a salad. And then I can put all those 3 Ps in there and I can take the olive oil and drizzle it over the top. For me, when I buy olive oil or I buy, kefir yogurt or some of the prebiotics, to me, that it would be the equivalent, this salad that I make in general would be the equivalent of me going and getting a probiotic pill. I do not take probiotic pills anymore. Because what I do is I fast to rearrange my microbiome, and then I come in with the 3 Ps when I make that first meal. So polyphenol foods, olives are great. Chocolate, dark chocolate is amazing. Spices are amazing. Those of you in my academy, I've been sharing with you some of the things I learned about spices from Chef Jeff, who was one of the contributing chefs to the book. So that first meal matters. And if you want to change your cravings and start to feed your microbes, feed them the 3 Ps and your taste buds will change. Okay, so that's foundational rule number 3. Foundation rule number 4 is yes, Protein is the hero macronutrient. Protein is having her moment. This is another one that I see every influencer, especially women who are educating women, we all agree, yes, you need more protein. And the research says 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight you want to be. That's what you want in a day. Now, I will tell you, that's really hard to do. It's hard to get that much protein in, but go for it. It's a good target. What I have chosen to do is just say every meal should have some form of protein. And when we look at the lens of protein, we want to look through the lens of diversity. Every protein source has a different amino acid makeup. I wrote these all out in Eat Like a Girl. So if you all are panicking and you're like, well, oh my God, I promise you, I have a whole list of plant-based proteins and what their amino acid profiles are. And I have a whole list of meat proteins and what their amino acid profiles are. I also, in Eat Like a Girl, put a big spread of what I call the key 24 nutrients you need to make a hormone. And in that 24, 9 of them are amino acids. You get amino acids from protein-rich foods. So you need to make sure there's protein in every meal and that you're diversifying your protein sources. So if you eat meat, it might look like you don't eat grass-fed steak every day. You might eat bison. Maybe you eat buffalo. Maybe you try like the Force of Nature. Again, I don't have any affiliate with them. They have an incredible, you can find this at Sprouts. They have an ancestral blend where they'll take meat, like a grass-fed beef, and then they'll mix into it heart and liver and kidneys. So you get all those organ meats. Like there's some really interesting combinations of meat. Poultry is incredible source of tryptophan, an amino acid. And tryptophan is necessary to make serotonin. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter that tells you it's all good. It's all good. And serotonin is what comes rushing in after dopamine comes in. Then dopamine's like, that was amazing, let's do it again. And serotonin's like, thank you very much. I feel really good. I'm just going to sit in the joy of the moment. So making sure we get enough serotonin is important. And one of the ways you get enough serotonin is making sure you get tryptophan. And one of the ways you get tryptophan is in eating poultry. You also can get it in eggs and in cheese. So, and some mushrooms for my plant-based friends have tryptophan in them. So when we're looking at these meats, and protein, we have to look at protein through the lens of amino acids because we need different amino acids to be able to make hormones and neurotransmitters. If you want to build muscle and you want to really focus on increasing your protein, I like the 1 gram for every pound of body weight. The other thing would be at that first meal, make sure you're getting 30 grams of protein, because 30 grams of protein is definitely where you start to open up amino acid receptor sites in the muscle that, like, I always think of it like a sea anemone that like opens up and now things can go into it. So again, I don't want to go, I'm staying high level. I wrote all this out in Eat Like a Girl. But I just want you to think protein. How much protein am I getting in the day? The fifth foundational 5 idea is fat doesn't make you fat. Now, there are 2 ways I want to rebrand fat. One is that fat, if you add fat into every meal, it will help with principle number 1, which is blood sugar matters. So it stabilizes, it's like puts the brakes on your blood sugar. So it's amazing for that. You also need a very specific fat, both men and women, to be able to make hormones. And it is called omega-3 fatty acids. There are lots of ways to get omega-3 fatty acids. Extra virgin olive oil is the best way. Wild salmon, which also, by the way, salmon, it will help you with tryptophan. So wild, though, not farm fresh, is another way to bring in essential fatty acids. Grass-fed beef has essential fatty acids. But when you go to the market, get the highest quality extra virgin olive oil you can get, because that will nourish your cells so that you're able to make hormones and will stabilize your blood sugar so you don't end up on this up and down. So within these foundational 5, there's a lot of detail. So I just want to help you understand that food, with food, when you go back into the eating window, you're going to have a personal value system about what you are not going to eat. So put the guardrails up. You're going to follow the foundational 5 ideas. You're going to make sure that that first meal back in is the best meal you can possibly make it. Like, of all the meals, that should be the best one. And then the last one, and one that many of you are going to notice over the next couple of days, and one that I really, really want to highlight, is this idea you should feel good after you eat. And this is very specific to this moment right here, right now. For the next several days, you are going to have a unique opportunity to see what foods don't serve you. People spend thousands of dollars on food allergy tests, and you can do one yourself for nothing, for zero money. After you eat for the next couple of days, as you are bringing food back in, I would encourage you to notice, where's my mental clarity? How's my energy? Did that leave me hungry? And then there's another one, which is, did I get bloated? Did I get constipated after that meal? There was something that was very popular years ago called a food elimination diet. And the food elimination diet was, let's take everything out that we don't think is going to works anymore, and then we'll add them in one by one. You have primed your gut for a food elimination process for the next couple of days. Play with the principles. So I'll give you an example. The very first 3-day water fast I did, I broke it with eggs. And I think I mentioned this. The main thing I had was eggs, and I was so sleepy and I had so much brain fog. I decided after that to stay off of eggs for a while until I could work on repairing my gut, because, by the way, food allergies are just a gut dysbiosis. So I was like, wow, that's really interesting that I feel so sleepy with eggs. Years ago, before I had my first child, I did something called the Master Cleanse. Did anybody do the Master Cleanse? And I broke the Master Cleanse with a bowl of cereal, which was my favorite food at the time. And I did the Master Cleanse for like 10 days. I mean, I went all in. And I broke it. The last couple of days, I was really just water fasting because I couldn't drink the syrupy drink that they encourage you to eat. So I went right in on a bowl of cereal, because cereal was my favorite. And I felt like somebody had tranquilized me. And I was like, wow, that's what cereal does to me? So over the next couple of days, you have this real unique opportunity to see how you are reacting to food. And don't miss that opportunity, because if you are not feeling great after a meal, you should go back and ask yourself what in that meal might not work for me. And sometimes it'll be very easy. Sometimes it'll be very hard. Like it's a real interesting lens for you to see. But keep in mind, after every meal, you should have energy, mental clarity, and you shouldn't be hungry. And if that is not happening, you're going to continue to work on the meals. And again, I promise you, it's coming. It's coming so you can master this eating window. If I could get it to you quicker, I would, but it is a process to put a book like Eat Like a Girl together. So, but I want you to not miss this moment. I also really feel like the food allergy world, we've calmed down a little bit on it, but the reason we have so many people reacting to certain foods is because our food system has created damage to our microbiome. And what I just explained, this metabolic switch, learning how to go into a fasting window and then learning how to succeed at your eating window should keep you be the foundation of health for you. And if you learn to master these two things, your relationship to food changes, your relationship to your body changes. Like you start to see that food is fun. It can be pure enjoyment. There doesn't have to be guilt. There doesn't have to be shame. There doesn't have to be restriction. And if you decide at some point your favorite food is a Pop-Tart or you want a Coke, as long as you've got this metabolic switch prime, try it one day and let me know how it feels. There are so many food addictions I have been able to help people get over, not because of me, because all we did is create this foundation with their metabolic switch. And once they went back to their favorite food, they all of a sudden was like, no more. Just like cereal for me. I literally, after the master cleanse, no more cereal because I had a logical consequence. Part of the problem with the food that you're eating right now that isn't serving you is you're just getting the dopamine and you're not seeing the logical consequence that's happening to your body. And now you have an opportunity to see what this food is doing for you. So take a really close, microscope to this. Make sense? So this is the art of your metabolic switch. Now, I want to finish up this call with something that I have done a full podcast on that I have wrote about in Eat Like a Girl for the first time. My Reset Academy has heard me talk about this, but it really is worth diving in more. And it's called the dysregulation loop. What is happening to humans right now, but especially women, is many of our systems are off. Our metabolic system is destroyed. Our nervous system is crazy. I mean, anybody know the polyvagal theory? The polyvagal theory says most people are in freeze mode right now. We are now developing a third nervous system. So our nervous systems are off. Our microbial system is off because of I talked about that today. Our immune systems are off. I mean, we just witnessed that in a pandemic, but we're also witnessing the fact that women, 80% of autoimmune conditions are happening to women. So our immune systems are off and our hormonal systems are off. And that is leading to our emotional systems off. We have 6 systems that are out of balance. And what's happening is if we don't fix this loop, one system going down is creating all the other systems to be out of balance. There are 2 doors in to fixing this dysregulation loop. And here's where I saw it, by the way, is after 25 years in practice, I was shocked how when I first went into practice, the women that came into my practice had one symptom. By the time I had closed my clinic, women were pouring in with a laundry list of symptoms. And they're like, I can't get ahead of this. It's just one problem after another problem after another problem. Put in the chat if that's you. So we have to go back to this fact that as humans, thank you for your honesty. I'm watching people put it back in. Like, thank you. Like when we are just honest, we free everybody else. So we have to go back to the fact that we are rhythmic humans. Whether you're a man or a woman, we work off rhythm. One of the primary rhythms we work off of is circadian rhythm. We'll dive into that a little bit more tomorrow. We literally have a circadian rhythm that when light changes, hormones change in our body. For example, when sunset hits, there is a red hue in the sky. That red hue in the sky gets triggered into the eyes, and the eyes go, oop, it's getting dark now. I better make melatonin. And melatonin goes up, and you become more insulin resistant. That's a topic we'll talk about tomorrow. But you need melatonin because your body's preparing itself to sleep. So you gotta have melatonin. In the morning, when you wake up in the morning, your eyes see the light coming red again and the light gets turned on and your body goes, oh, well, we've been in dark for the last, 8 hours and now we're coming into light. We should shut off melatonin and we should make the body more insulin sensitive and we should increase cortisol because this human needs to get up and move to go find food. So that is a rhythm. Again, we'll go into this detail more tomorrow that our body is programmed with. The second rhythm we talked about today, it's the metabolic rhythm. We're meant to go have periods when we eat and periods when we don't eat. The other rhythm that we should be attached to and think about is the stress rhythm. We are not meant to have stress all the time. We are meant to have bursts of stress. And I'll talk about this tomorrow. We have a hormonal rhythm. This is what I wrote about in both books. Women that are cycling, you have estrogen coming in the beginning of your cycle. You get a big burst of testosterone when estrogen peaks. And in the back half of your cycle, you get progesterone. You do not get estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone all month long. There's a rhythm there. With lifetime menopausal women, you had your hormones come in at puberty and your hormones went away at menopause. There was a rhythm there. So we've got to start thinking in terms of rhythms. This is why we don't fast all the time. We need to fast and we need to eat. We need that rhythm. So I'm going to leave you with this idea is that tomorrow I'm going to go through the dysregulation loop in detail. This has been a very, very popular, it's actually one of the most popular podcasts I put out this year. It's on the Resetter podcast. You can go listen to it. But we have to bring regulation back to the human body. And if you see how dysregulated you got, you will see that the journey back to regulation is a beautiful one. And once you are well regulated, the body wants to come back into homeostasis. It is always trying to come back into balance. I think of do you remember those, they were like blow up clown balloons that we used to use as a kid where we would push them over and they would flop back up? I forget what those were called. That's your body. It falls down, it gets back up. It falls down, it gets back up. And then one day it falls down and it can't get back up. That's because it is stuck in a state of dysregulation. And tomorrow we're going to teach you how to bring it back into a regulated place. Because the world we live in right now is no longer a world of, oh, let me go on a diet and my life will change. There are these systems that we need to put into place, and I will go through the dysregulation loop in detail. It is such an important concept. And what I'm trying to set you all up for is long-term health that is effortless, because the best health habits are the ones you can stick to. And there will become a moment where, as you understand the different rhythms of your body and how to honor them, where you're just living a healthy life and you don't have to think about it anymore. It's effortless and it's fun and you're not in deprivation. I'll never forget the conversation I had with another mom. My daughter did a sport called equestrian vaulting, which is a total trippy sport. And it's gymnastics on the back of a moving horse. And we traveled all over the world with a group, with families that participated in this. And one day, one of the moms looked at me after like a year of us traveling together and hanging out together. And she said, okay, I want to hear what you're doing, because I have now traveled with you and you don't look like you're in deprivation. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm in regulation. I am in regulation, not deprivation. And if you look through the eyes of regulation, you will never be in deprivation. And tomorrow I want to go into that. But for today, I really want you to know, like, again, there's an eating window. I created a whole freaking book on it. And there's a fasting window, and they go together. They go together. So when people tell you you shouldn't fast, you should equate that to you shouldn't fast all the time. And when people say they're food addicted, you equate that to I trained my microbes to favor a food. If you truly saw how powerful you were, you would blow your own mind. So tomorrow, we're going to blow your own mind. And we're going to teach you how to get into regulation and get out of deprivation. Deal? And if you want a head start, go listen to the Resetter podcast where I talk about the regulation loop. So, okay, thank you everybody on Zoom whose beautiful faces. I just love seeing you. And again, this is freedom. I hope you see this is freedom. That's what I'm teaching. Thank you. So I see some of you putting thumbs up, and I really appreciate it, because that's how we get out of it. Actually, one more thing I'm going to tell you. I had a beautiful podcast interview yesterday with a woman that was talking about how women get sold to, and how we become, because women, by the way, are like the most profitable person for many companies. Tomorrow, when I teach you regulation, this is how you no longer fall prey to supplements. You no longer fall prey to diet trends. You no longer fall prey to health influencers. Like, I'm going to teach you how to take your control back by understanding regulation. Then you're unstoppable. Nobody can manipulate you. And that is a powerful person. Deal? Okay. Peace out. I'll see you all tomorrow.